to recap, we have punk, hardcore, metalcore, country, we'll say mainstream country. Fifth genre, what would that be?
Connor, you got to choose this one.
Yeah, I think Connor.
No,
I've done the four. You said you're going to tangent.
He's done four. Like I think it works out.
You said you were going to tangent, so we're saving the fourth for you to tangent.
Yeah, no, fifth. Yeah, he gets the last one. Fifth. Tangent, baby.
I have no least favorite genres. 90% of everything is crap. Most music just sucks straight up.
I've mostly gone for the ones that most people like that I dislike heavily. Was my main goal. There's a lot of things I like less than these, but like, what's a thing that a lot of people like that you just really cannot get behind and have fundamental issues with?
There's another really good Adam Neely video. It's about music people hate, and he makes a very good observation, which I can't really progress without citing, that the music people are viscerally opposed to is usually, as Zach kind of pointed out also, music that's very close to something you love. It's this sort of uncanny valley of like, I should be obsessed with this, but there's one thing that's slightly off.
Uncanny valley music is the oddest and most useful term I have heard recently. This music hits the uncanny. Yeah, no, that's right. That's 100% accurate.
So in the spirit of that, Deathcore, it's like so close to perfect. There are a lot of really good deathcore acts that I really respect, but not even 99% of it is unlistenable, trite, disastrously produced. Like someone should be shot. And that's like the stuff that's on the radios. Not even the things that people who want to start bands make. Because deathcore's, it's not the most difficult music to come up with because it's so fun. It's very intuitive. It's like incredibly cathartic. Yeah. I loved working on Gorehound stuff because it's like my shit.
It's meant to be like larger than life, but it ends up losing a lot in that perspective because in the larger than life like worldview, there ends up losing a lot of that human aspect, and it all ends up sounding like scarily the same. At
least from my small perspective, it either ends up sounding like black metal or it sounds like pop production with this heavy stuff and just does not give me any impact of what it should be.
Well, like most deathcore is heavily overproduced, and like that has kind of become the trope of the genre.
And it feels very antithetical to the ethos of what appeals to me about deathcore is it's death metal, which is just like the most disgusting music people could come up with.
It's meant to be raw and aggressive and in your face.
Yeah, mixed with hardcore, which comes from punk music. And in my mind, it's just punk music accelerated to be the most crushing. And deathcore, when it's done well, I much rather talk about music I like than music I dislike. So I'll explain why 99% of deathcore sucks, is because it's put in juxtaposition with the deathcore that I love, which is vocals that sound either like unique and monstrous, like something I could not comprehend. There's Will Ramos, is fantastic, but everyone trying to sound like Will Ramos doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
Or, on the other hand, stuff that just sounds like a human who is so unbelievably pissed off that he's producing the craziest sounds you can imagine. And that's why I think a lot of the best deathcore is taking a lot of influence from hip-hop as far as vocals. The flow of it, harsh vocals and rap are both quote-unquote unpitched. The pitch is complex and it's a lot more fluid, a lot closer to spoken language because it's not like quantized to 12 notes. And so the deathcore that really does it for me is the stuff that's really in tune with melody, but rhythmic melody.
That's where I think like early deathcore like really kind of encompassed what it was supposed to sound like, and like most of the modern bands kind of lost that perspective. Because if you look at bands like Suicide Silence, when they did The Cleansing back in like 2006 or whenever the fuck they did that, it was recorded live, and the band, like when Mitch Lucker did it, he wasn't trying to sound like non-human with his stuff, but he still kind of achieved that, I guess, vision because of that. Like they were coming from it with that perspective of, like you said, with like hip hop.
And you really hear the sound of his body
Yes.
in those recordings. Like it's, I'm not trying to diss any particular technique, but a lot of deathcore vocalists are like really quiet when they scream.
Yeah.
And if it sounds good, quiet, please, for the love of God, do it quiet. Like do whatever it takes to make it sound great. But a lot of the time it's just because they want to imitate something that is not what their body does. And instead of finding out what a body can do, they're just like, all right, I know the sound I want. I'm going to try and do it. It's a lot more interesting if you figure out what ways you can push yourself. How extreme can you sound, just like tearing the air out of your lungs with really incredible force?
Well, that comes down to my issue of a lot of people are like, let me write this and then we'll find out how we're going to do it live. No, you have to, if you want to be a band and you're not going to be like social media all day 24/7, like, yeah, you need to find out how you're going to do it, because a lot of people overlook the live aspect. And people are going to notice if you're not able to actually produce it. And that's not even just saying for a live show, that's saying even the recording. If you can't do it live, like if you're a voice actor trying to imitate a voice that you can't actually really do, but if you do it this is like one type of way, you can maybe get it, you're not going to be as good as somebody who can do it directly. So don't try to do that voice acting. Find a thing that works for your voice. You're a human entity with vocal cords that you were born with. Work around it. Find the sounds you can get that imitate something you like. Don't try to be something you're not just because I really, really like this dude with this deep, deep octave, but I have a high, high voice. Yeah, it's not going to work.
I want to hear the sound of your chest in that. If you have a high voice, show me how intense it can get. I was going through and listening to a lot of Greg Puciato's projects earlier, and like I haven't heard him speak much, but his screams are high and they're like visceral, aggressive. It sounds both like human and more than human. He's one of my favorite screamers of all time because of that.
It's like coming to the terms to the fact that I'm never going to be 5'10". Just got to work with it, man. Work with your vocal cords.
Yeah. A lot of deathcore, those dudes very much so try to be larger than life, and in the process, they end up losing that human aspect.
It's almost like Marvel visual effects. You know what I'm saying? You can make it look larger than life, but we know that's not like real life. I'd be more impacted if you like let off one explosion in real life on the ground. And let me see that like real, like what's happening. Like I know it's like, yeah, I get the idea of this and this, but I'm not getting the texture. I'm not getting like the actual, like what you're doing. So
stop trying to be larger than life and be larger than life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was going to say also real life can sometimes be more brutal and impactful than larger than life. Like you can cope with larger than life sometimes. If you're hitting something that slams, like some deathcore, sometimes you need that real life on it.
Yeah, most definitely.
Especially if you're more attuned to larger than life productions, which a lot of people now are so used to that you hit something more visceral, more organic. It's going to sound thicker.
Yeah, and I was late getting into deathcore in general. I was late getting into metal in general. But what struck me going back to early Bring Me the Horizon, because I heard that they did deathcore, they're super influential.
Oh yeah, one of the first.
That dude doesn't sound anything like what's on the radio now. It's literally just a guy screaming, and he wasn't screaming well. Like he blew out his voice and had to change his whole thing.
Yeah, most definitely.
And you can literally hear his voice getting fucked up during those recordings.
Yeah.
That's metal. It's very passionate. There was more emotion in those early songs. They're like devoid of melody, just raw screaming, than a lot of their newer stuff. Now, I love pop music. I really like what Bring Me the Horizon has been doing recently, but I don't like it for the emotion. I like it for the fun, the pop melodies. If I want emotion, I want to go listen to him yelling at the top of his lungs.
Yeah. I think the kind of visceral aspect of like hearing somebody scream as hard as they can into a microphone is something that's kind of been lost. And I mean, even though we covered hardcore as like one of the least favorite genres, to me that is one of the appeals of hardcore. Is like most of the hardcore vocalists are not like quote unquote like classically trained. Like most of them don't have a technique that they follow. Most hardcore vocalists, it's just a dude screaming as hard as they can into a microphone. And for a lot of people, like that is the appeal, because you're not having somebody who's like as concerned about like the melodic sensibility or like the longevity of what they're doing, and you just have like the raw human aspect. And I think stuff like that is more authentic, and it translates better to like more people than something where they're trying to project themselves as something they're not.
And generally, if you're trying to project yourself as something you're not, it's because you're trying to project yourself as something else you have theoretically heard before in some way, which makes it less original. Like, your body's a unique thing. No one else can exert themselves and force tones out of themselves the way you can. So you should be doing whatever you can do, because you're going to get a unique result. And that's the fun part about a human sounding like they're like dying by over encumbering their vocal cords. They react different. So yeah.
Most definitely.
I do have one more least favorite genre. Contemporary Christian music. As in radio contemporary Christian music.
I was about to say cap until you said that, yeah.
And it's because worship music is one of my favorite genres of music to listen to. I mean, I don't care about any discussion of authenticity. Most of it's focus group tested and written, but it's good. It has an industry that's as well funded as pop music and has people who are way more committed and scrutinizing, because it's a spiritual experience. You're not just throwing this on in the car, on the radio at work. You're going to a live setting, and most of these songs are interpreted by thousands of bands across the world, like every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really need to get by on just like, how good is this melody? How satisfying is this chord progression? How faithful and easy and enjoyable to sing are these lyrics? And that's like, I think just the art of songwriting stripped down to its basic form. It's worship music is the purest form of pop music.
It is.
Again, I'll reiterate, I love pop music. 90% of it is crap, as suggested by Sturgeon's Law, but as is 90% of everything. Worship music is pretty incredible. Contemporary Christian music is everything wrong with worship music and nothing right with worship music. It's, I think, the same category of problems as bro country.
Yeah.
It's very much just pop music with this like certain demographic themes inserted over it kind of clumsily.
And it's meant to be easily digestible, like by design. I know quite a few people who are a fan of contemporary Christian music because of the fact that it is so easily digestible and you don't have to listen deeply on the words, but it still kind of conveys that like feeling of spirituality through the music.
And the cringiest part to me is it's literally just, it could be pop lyrics, except they insert God between every other line, so you know that they're singing a love song about Jesus and not about some girl in the club.
Yeah, I will say, as a person who listens to contemporary Christian music in my car regularly, I would not be able to listen to it if I had not first heard these songs performed live while working at church.
Again, to be clear, contemporary Christian or worship music, because they're different things. Contemporary Christian is, you should think, the stuff that plays on the radio at Countryside Collectibles.
Okay, I was going to go with like, does Hillsong stuff, or is that worship music?
Hillsong actually has a worship music division and a contemporary Christian division.
Interesting, because yeah, I listen to the Hillsong live recordings normally.
That's worship music.
Okay,
yeah.
Then yeah, worship music, phenomenal. Contemporary Christian music, yeah, I agree with you, because the worship songs, I still stand by with the worship songs. If I hadn't heard them live first, I would not be able to hear them like recorded because I don't know the power of what's behind it. Because they're meant to be heard live. You're meant to feel it.
That makes sense. That's the case with a lot of music. Classical music, I think it's the same. I can't get behind listening to classical music on recordings, but I'll go apeshit to the symphony. I would headbang if people would let me.
You haven't been groovy enough. Listen to Fur Elise, then that stuff goes wild.
But yeah, I'm talking about the music that, again, it sounds like top 40 pop radio, just with God or Jesus inserted every other line.
Andy Mineo slaps.
I don't know who that is, but I might agree.
He's a Christian rapper who I have Stockholm Syndrome with because I've had to play him for all my jump rope stuff because it's hip hop, but it has to be clean because it's Christian.
I stand by just play like clean edits of Eminem. Just like do the Slim Shady like LP, but like clean.
Missing every other word.
So I guess what we're seeing as like the overarching trend is that when genres try to do pop music, it definitely is kind of off-putting. And as we've kind of discussed, like whether it's the metal version of pop music, the country version of pop music, Christian version of pop music, or anything that's not been listed, it is very off-putting to the vast majority of listeners.
Yeah, because I mean, pop music pretty much just means not. Well, honestly, I mean, not to negate what you said, but I mean, pop music just blatantly means not off-putting. So it doesn't do anything special for anybody. It just does something for everybody.
It's very safe.
Yes, so that is when you make music safe, is when, to me, it gets less fun. I want to hear some weirdness, like some breaking the fourth wall production or something. Like, I'm not saying that's like a qualification, like needs to be done, but there's just like a lot of things you can do that would not fall under that category of pop music, because pop is meant to be everybody can tolerate it and be okay with it. If there's anything off-putting or disruptive, you're going to lose a couple people. But like, I'm not going to turn off the pop radio if it's on, unless I have like a better thing to do. But like, I'm not going to choose no music over pop radio. I mean, that's the entire purpose. It's just to put something out.
I want to push back on this idea a little bit, because I've said it several times, I really like pop music, and I've got a very specific idea of what pop music is. So when I think of pop music, accessibility and I guess widespread resonance are big concerns. And so, yeah, it's safe. But it also comes directly from the affordances of recording technology. So pop music for me is what sounds good on a recording. I think no genre can translate from live to recording without thinking about becoming pop music in some sense or another. There's things like, originally pop music emerged from, if you think about the earliest pop music was like jazz-based crooning. And that's only possible because you have the invention of recording technology and the electrical microphone. And so you can have a singer sing very soft, intimate, sound like they're in the room with you and connect on a personal level. And that's something that's accessible to a lot of people because the sound of the human voice can generate connection a lot more easily than just abstract sounds. And so pop music is vocal music for one. And it's also very heavily invested in the recording production. And that's the thing that separates, like we've talked about a lot of folk music that gets turned into pop music. Country, I'd argue that punk constitutes a kind of folk music, hip hop too. And some of the issues that happen when these genres go pop is they get more invested in the production than in just the energy of the live performance, which is where the genres originated, and it's where the values of the genres are reinstated. Again, the value of punk hardcore, it demands you have to yell at the top of your lungs because these are genres that were refined, developed in shitty underground venues. If your mic goes out, you better be able to scream it and have people hear you. And that's like a thing that happens often in underground punk shows. It's that translation process. And I think it's not so much the presence of pop influence. I think it's not recognizing the fact that pop is directly tied to recording production. And you need to realize that the kind of translation that's happening when you want to incorporate these elements is going to be different from what happens live, from the sort of organic evolution of a band. And there's a lot of bands who like form and want to be pop. And it's kind of awkward and clumsy because when you form, it's folk music at first. It's participatory, it's improvisational. And a lot of people consider these pop elements to be mostly just like in pop melodies and assume you can just like kind of haphazardly throw synths onto something and make it better. And that's not what the ethos of pop is to me. I think it's a lazy understanding of what pop can do to people. And of course, I mean, lazy consumption habits. People are just too willing to accept some rehashed stuff because it is easy to listen to. But a lot of the best pop music throughout history has actually pushed boundaries. It's not like you can just be the best pop musician by being the most cliche pop musician. That's not that genre.